Hello, welcome to day one. Let's get started. We're going to be sketching out the image, and I didn't ask you to do it first because I want to talk through some of the composition decisions that I make as I go and some of the changes I make. We are then going to be putting the first layer of the sky on and blending it, both finger blending, so I'll show you an example of blending with finger if you're working on normal pastel paper. But also we're going to be doing a wet blending technique, which you can do if you're using Pastel Matte or Fisher 400. If you're using any other type of sanded paper, you need to check with the manufacturer first that it takes water or takes liquid. They don't all, and you don't want to end up with a big nasty mushy mess. So if you're using paper that you can't use wet on, then just use your fingers or even a little makeup sponge to blend. They work really well on some of the other papers. So this is the image that we're working from, and you can see that it was a dull grey day. It's of a Cornish beach, and we are going to use some artistic license to liven it up a bit. So yeah, we're going to have some fun, and I can't wait to get started. So I chose this image on purpose because you don't have to be very specific about what colours you use. You will need some of your darkest darks for underpainting these areas. You'll need some different types of blues, mauvey blues and greeny blues. Then this area will be sandy colour, soft peaches and yellows, and some violet, because yellow and violet are opposite each other on the colour wheel, which means it will make the contrast even more effective. Now you have got this picture, but what I want to talk about is as I draw it out, I want to change it just slightly so that it makes a little bit of a better image. So my cliff is going to come down here, and I hope you can see I'm using a light pencil. And it comes in about a third of the way, and then we have the fence, which comes not quite to the centre. And then the grass goes up here. So I want more sky, and I want my grasses on this side to have the sky, the sea and the sky showing through. This path, if you look, it actually bends out, but I want it to come out a bit more so that it leads the eye further into the corner. We can alter it all as we go, but I want a bit more sea. So my sea is going to come across here, and this foliage is going to basically come up here, if you can see that. And I'm only sketching it in, and I'm not going to try and be too precious about it either. So we have the beach is down here, and then you have the other part of the fence just here. So it's a very simple image. There's almost no drawing in it. It really is just getting the shapes in place. There's a little clump of grass here. This grass comes out here. The beach comes across. There's some rocks. You don't have to put them in. I think I will, because it just adds a focal point. And then this path comes in quite narrow here, so the grasses come across, and then I want this path to come out this way. I may make this a little narrower as we go forward, but for the time being, this is my main composition. So my horizon is above the centre. I don't want it midway. There's lots of reasons for that, but we're talking the rule of golden thirds in art, where if you have a focal point, you either want it, 2/3 somewhere, either 2/3 up or 2/3 down, or 2/3 either way. So mine, it isn't quite centre. In fact, I might move it over just to make sure that it's not directly centre. It's a little bit off to the right. But I hope you can see that. Now we're going to start off with the sky, and basically we have just the 3 blues. We have a dark mauvey blue, which is actually BV10, a mid blue, which is BV9, and then a pale blue green, which is BV7. But anything you have that's similar is fine. And I'm going to show you a couple of ways of blending. So we're working on Pastel Matte here, and if you're using Pastel Matte or Fisher 400 or UArt, we can do a wet underpainting, which we'll come on to. If you're using normal pastel paper, then you can't use wet, so I will demonstrate how to do some blending on this sort of paper. And all we want to do is really use the pastel on its side, slightly diagonal. You don't want to cover it completely, just layer them. You want to avoid having stripes, but you want a gradual gradation of dark to light. And then you can just blend with your fingers if you're using normal pastel paper. And as it comes down to the horizon, the colour's going to get cooler, so more greeny and paler. And that's going to give the illusion of distance. Now you can blend like that on Pastel Matte. You can blend with your fingers, but you need a lot more pastel and it's harder to do. And before you can do it, you need quite a bit of pastel on the paper. So I'll show you both because we're going to do a bit of finger blending, but then I'll show you, we're going to do a wet underpainting as well, because I find that's really useful for some areas, and particularly when we do the darker bits, you'll find it's very helpful. I'm trying not to get stripes. It's very easy to get stripes, so don't be too hard on yourself if that's what happens. You can always go back over. And I'm being quite heavy-handed with the pastel because I do want enough so that I can blend with my fingers, like taking it up back over some of that colour. And just blend it with your fingers. If you're using Fisher 400, and I've never used UArt because Fisher 400 is like the UK equivalent, but I know with Fisher 400, because it's quite heavily sanded, you can't blend with your fingers, you'll take your fingerprints off. So with that, you need to use the wet technique. So I'm going to show you that now as well. So you can just keep building the layers up. Put some more colour on as you go. So you can still see the paper through here. So I'm putting some more colour on. If you're blending with your fingers, and you'll find as you build up the layers, the pastel itself will begin to blend for you. But it gets easier and easier the more pastel you have on the paper. Right, so I'm going to leave that there and show you the wet technique. So for the wet technique, as I say, you can really only do it on Pastel Matte, Fisher 400, and I think UArt, but do check first. We need a soft brush. This is just a cheap soft brush from our local hobby store, and some white spirit. This is actually vodka, and it should be cheap vodka, but this is actually quite a well-known brand. but it was all we had, and my other half thought I'd taken to secret drinking when he noticed a quarter of the bottle had gone, but I was painting. Anyway, so just dip your brush in, and then just gently, all we want to do is get that colour to sink into the paper a little bit. And it will blend as it goes, and because you've layered the colour, you'll begin to get some areas that look like there might be clouds and things. There we are, as you work down towards the horizon. And don't forget, we're going to go over this with pastels. This is not the final stage. This is just the very first stage, just getting colour onto the paper. And it really doesn't matter what colour paper you work on either, because it's all going to get covered up in the end. That's better because it's blending a bit better now. There we are. And then you leave that to dry. Now you can do this with water, which is fine at this stage, because you can go away and leave it till tomorrow. But if you want it to dry quickly, then you need to use some sort of white spirit, but water's absolutely fine.